what you learn how to do is based on what you experience, and what you experience is based on where you put your attention, and whatever that thing is that you're putting your attention on, whatever that thing is you're interacting with, what that quality of interaction is. And throw away this idea of trying to learn anything specific. We're just talking about learning, going into a state of learning and exploring. So how does this relate to the autonomic nervous system, and what can we do with this knowledge to actually help ourselves learn faster? You're probably familiar with the fight or flight, that is the sympathetic state, and then the rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic state. In the parasympathetic state, we are able to learn, to pick up new information. I have another video that explains that in a little bit more detail. But the point in this video is, how do we actively, intentionally enter into the parasympathetic state so that we can learn? And how do we become aware of when we are leaving the parasympathetic state and distracted by other things, for example, and that learning is becoming more difficult? In the sympathetic state, the heart rate is higher and you're focusing on specific things. So there's physical effects, and there's more than that. And in this other video that talks about the physiology and the anatomy of the autonomic nervous system, I described that. And also, so it's a physical thing, but it's also a mental thing, because you're in this mode of quickly assessing things. You're not interested in being like, oh, maybe this thing can be categorized or rethought of. You're like, no, I got to make a quick judgment and I need to figure this out and get out of here. Like if you're in a really dangerous situation, you don't want to spend time trying to figure things out. I mean, you do, but only enough to that you can then mobilize the body into action. So the idea is like, what's the minimum amount of information I can take in to come to an assessment that then mobilizes my body in space? And that's the mode you are in when you're in the sympathetic nervous system state. You're in this mode of the body primed and ready to do something. So everything's on deck, like all hands are on deck, which means the body is in a posture of, let's go, let's do it, let's get away from this thing, let's engage with this thing in a way that is very specific, engaging with the thing as to get away from it or neutralize it in some way. Again, sympathetic state isn't always that. We can also go into the sympathetic state for performances, like athletic performances and dance, but a lot of the time there's this sense of nervousness and urgency and really judging things, assessing things to be in a certain way. In the parasympathetic state, we are relaxed, we are open to learning new things. We're kind of like, oh yeah, maybe what I once thought of this thing, actually I can think about it in a different way. And that's a really powerful place to be. It's a really powerful place to be, to reassess or to suspend assessment. And imagine suspending assessment of when you are focused on yourself and how you perceive yourself and how you perceive how you relate to your environment, how your thoughts relate to your posture and your movement. So that is again, physical and mental qualities I'm describing here. So already maybe you have some idea of, okay, how can I be aware with what state I'm in? Now, the heart rate is slower. You are not quickly reacting to things in your environment. What does this mean for a practice, and how can you use these ideas to learn about your body, to learn about yourself? Well, one, just awareness of where your mind is pointed. So if you are a person who practices meditation already, then that you already have an advantage there of being aware of, where is my point of focus? And is it on the internal sensory experience in my body? So if you are a dancer or an athlete, or you do any activity that involves paying attention to the sensory receptors that are in the body for balance and coordination, a little bit ahead there. And if you're not, like, somatics is so approachable that anyone can do it, and anyone's unique experience of themselves, at least in my opinion, is the most interesting, beautiful, wonderful thing. So don't be discouraged if be enthused no matter what. Do whatever you want. But there's not a steep learning curve, just put it that way. But the more you practice something, the better you become. So that first part is, where is your attention? Or can you be aware that your attention is drifting? And how does this relate to the nervous system states? Well, if the sympathetic state is active, then we're really concerned about the external environment. We're really concerned about, oh, what does that noise mean? What does that sound mean? What does this change in my external environment mean for my own personal safety? We can also feel the same way about what we're experiencing on the inside. Like, and this is big with pain. Like, oh shit, what is this? What does this pain mean? And come to a quick assessment about it. And even then, your point of focus practice becomes very important, because as soon as you start feeling pain, it's possible then the mind is no longer interacting with the pain. It's interacting with this idea of disappointment, or these sensations of emotions in the body related to the pain. So we're not focused on that sensation anymore. We're not focused on the information the body is trying to present. That, I will argue, is the most valuable information in that moment for dealing with pain. So, point of focus, being aware of when the mind is focused on other things to learn about the body. The second thing, the quality of that focus. Being aware of, am I enthused? Am I interested in even what I'm listening to right now, what I'm interacting with right now? Do I feel overwhelmed? Do I feel scared? Whatever it is, at least just becoming aware of it. And there's Buddhist psychology teachings that describe and offer meditations through experience, and this is what I offer too in somatic practice, is actively choosing your quality of perception. So actively choosing, when you sense some sort of suffering in your body, to approach that with compassion. To say, I'm going to be compassionate right now. And even if it's just for a moment, you can do it. And then observe if that is helpful for you or not. See what happens. And the more we try on these qualities of perception in interacting with specific objects, in this example, the object being the body, the more familiar of a routine, of like a mental, a sensory, psychological routine that becomes. So then when things present themselves that are troubling, we have at least a little bit more of the option, the familiarity of how to interact with those things in a way that we might be able to get more information about them. So that's about the quality of perception and choosing that quality of perception. Because again, learning is a function of experience. Experience is a function of what we're interacting with. What we're interacting with is always filtered through our perception of the experience. You can look at something right in front of you, you can listen to my words, and you can perceive me in a different way, and you are getting different information. That's just how it is. Last piece, applying this type of awareness to yourself as you are attempting to learn about your body, and realizing, oh, when is my heart rate going up? Okay, great, it's going up, or whatever. Or is my breathing getting faster? And just tuning into that if you want to, and seeing if that, hey, is this indicating that I'm getting into my sympathetic state, and do I want to go into my sympathetic state right now? So being active, kind of how we were talking about being active in the quality of perception, but being active in attending to what the body is presenting. To bring this into a practice, as we're talking about point of focus, quality of that focus, and then approaching it kind of from the other side of actively calming the body down to know that we are in that state where we can be learning. The last piece about this, and if you're interested in this, check out the community that I host, because we really go into taking all this theory that I'm describing and applying it into a practice in a way that it's embodied, and in a way that you as a participant are sharing your experience and collaborating and adding to this body of knowledge and this body of somatic practice. Okay, once we're in this state of this type of awareness and attention, what does the body start to do? And I propose that the body naturally starts to present different ways of muscle relaxation, different ways of movement, very, very subtle. There's smaller muscles in the body are more responsible for balance and coordination, and bigger muscles are more responsible for power and movement. So usually what's happening is these smaller muscles are starting to say, hey, like, let's relax a little bit. Let's try out a different way of how much tension we need to hold through movement. Let's try out a different way to move the body. And we come pre-programmed knowing these elegant, efficient ways to move. And it doesn't mean that these ways are the right way to move. It just means that knowing that these are possible ways to move gives you more options for how to move. The alternative being you have very limited options, and maybe those options are not the most helpful for a situation around you or how you want to interact. The more experience you have in different ways to do something, the more options you have to do it, and the more you can play in that space. So it's about noticing how the body is already presenting its own form of self-regulation and then attending to that and supporting that. That is the foundation of the way I offer teaching about the body, teaching about somatics. So thank you for watching this. I hope this is interesting, helpful information for you. If you want to practice it, again, there's that link to the community. Check out the other videos if you want to learn more about the autonomic nervous system or learning about how to learn. Thanks. Goodbye.